Hey there guys, Matt here. Today's job that we're going to be doing is changing the belts on a D22 Navara. This is a 2.5 litre 2010. Let's have a look in the engine bay and I'll show you where I'm up to. So there's 4 belts on this model of D22. There's these 2 yellow sort of ones you can see at the top here that power the alternator and the water pump. There's one just there below that that runs your air, is that your aircon or your power steering? Power steering by the look of it. No, it might be aircon. Might be both. And then there's a further one. No, that's your aircon one right down there that I'm not going to be changing today, but it's right at the very bottom. So today we're going to be pulling these 2 here off because they're being noisy as fuck. And while we're at it, we're just going to replace that little one there just while we've got it apart. So what you can see I've done so far is just take the 4 little nuts off the fan housing. I thought I was going to have to take this plastic shroud off, but I didn't. And it just sort of wiggled its way out between there and the fan came out, which is just there. So the belt you'll need, 2 13A 1050s and 1 13A 900. So that's what we're going to replace today. So next step is going to be to loosen that tension bolt just there, so that we can take that first belt off, and then we'll come over here, we'll undo that little screw with a nut on the back, and then we'll loosen this tension bolt here off, and hopefully we'll get those 2 belts off. They're pretty tight at the minute, but they're squealing and carrying on like mad, so let's get them off. Right, so I should just clarify the bolts and so forth under here. They're 10mm nuts on there. They're held on with Loctite. So you can either use a small socket wrench, or I used a ratchet spanner to get them undone. Sometimes you've got to put a bit of pressure down on these belts to stop that from spinning while you get them undone. But they come off pretty easy. Make sure you put them back on with Loctite. Down here, we've got this belt sitting pretty loose now. That's your tensioner, it's a 12mm, but you've got to undo the 14mm on the front of the actual pulley to loosen the pinch tension on this tensioning unit here in order to undo that. Don't go too much to town on this either, because you chance the tension at the back of the tensioner falling off the bolt that goes through, which is probably not too hard to get back on, but it's just one more thing you got to do. So we're going to go ahead and take this belt off now, and then we'll move on to these 2. Alright, so they're loose now. They'll come off easy. Undoing that's basically just this 12mm tension here on the front, or 12mm clamp screw. It tightens up to that. This bit will probably move around on you until it catches the edge of the this mounting plate, and then just unwinding that 12mm there until this winds its way out. Now, to actually get it to move, because you're effectively moving your entire alternator, I had to grab hold of these together and just reef them up, and that pulls the alternator in, and when we wind this back out, it'll push the alternator back down to where it's supposed to be. So just be wary that this is now loose, so it'll probably try and come off at the same time. So if it does, we'll just put it back on. I've just tucked into the shed quickly. This is our water pump pulley that the fan bolts to the front of. I've just taken this off because I've actually got a file, and what it sometimes pays to do is, if you can see, the pulley's got sort of a really smooth edge where the belt's been running. What I'm going to do is get this flat file, it's just a chainsaw raker file, and just go around the inside and put a bit of a burr on it, or a rough edge on it. That'll just give our belt, our new belts, something to sort of bite to, stop them slipping, and it'll also make sure that that edge is fairly flat, because if it's been through a few thousand Ks, it might have worn a bit of a groove into that. So we'll file it down, and you can see I've made a bit of a start, and you can also see that how it's rubbed on the bottom but not anywhere else. That's partly because of the burr. It's got a big bump at the bottom of it, so yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that There we go. Hope you can see that alright. Just a bit of it. Doesn't have to be much. Just a bit of an edge. It's one thing I've learned from working on, particularly riding on lawnmowers over the years, is that if belts have got nothing to grip to, they'll just start slipping like mad if they're not tight enough. So just a little bit of a burr, and we're going to put it back. So you can see the two belts for the water pump and the alternator on there now. Now, as I said before, I'm not going to do that very back belt, and I'll probably cop some shit for it from people who say, oh, if you're going to do one, you may as well do the lot. Yeah, look, I agree with you, but it's not the problematic one, and I don't really feel like rolling around underneath the car just for the sake of that. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but if you do want to do it, way down under there, right down past that aircon compressor, is another one of these little idler pulleys. Same setup as that, but upside down. You got to take that bottom bash plate off to get to it. Undo the little nut on the front, and then same deal as the top. Just unwind it and pull the belt off. You would have to unwind it a fair way, I'm thinking, because it's got to come right over the whole harmonic balancer, and it's a fairly small belt. So if you do want to do it, see if I put your phone down there. There it is there. That's it. That's upside down, but that's it. If you do want to do it, that's how you go about it. But anyway, I'm not going there. I've got these top two on. I've just sort of tensioned this up a little bit. I'm going to wait till I've got the fan back on there, on tight, to hold that pulley still before I really tighten it up, because otherwise it's going to pull that pulley on an angle. But that means I've got to get this front belt on first, but that means I've got to go get the proper front belt, which is that 13A0775. So I'm going to race down and grab that now, and then we'll come back and fix it. We're back, and we've got the right belt, and it's all mounted up. I had to take the trusty DRZ 400 down there, because obviously the ute's in pieces. So that's why I always suggest to anyone, if you can own a motorbike, do own a motorbike, because it'll get you out of the shit sometimes. So this new belt is a shitload tighter than the original one, and I actually had to take the pulley off just to get it under the belt and then get it all back together, which was a bit of a pain in the ass with 1.5 hands that I could fit down there. But yeah, it's all back together now. It's tensioned up. So that I just left a little bit loose while I cranked this 12mm here up. And then just crank that 14 on the front up, and it should hold it just nicely. So now we can go ahead and get the fan back on. We're going to do that first, and then we're going to crank the tension up on the alternator just there. And then job done. Might as well explain this fan while I'm here too, for anyone who's unfamiliar. Some people wonder why these fans are so big and so goddamn heavy. It's because they are what they call a hydrostatic fan or a hydrolytic fan. Basically there's oil inside here, a heap of fins around it that cool it down, and this little jigger on the front here, basically as your engine gets hotter, that coil of metal expands and twists that middle piece around. As it does so, it closes a valve and makes it very difficult for the oil to flow around the clutch. So it basically is a big clutch. So if you see on the back, this bit can turn sort of freely. It's a little bit hard to turn, but it can turn a bit freely to the rest of the fan. As the engine gets hotter and that valve closes, it stops allowing the oil to move around this and basically locks that to the rest of the fan body, so the fan is forced to turn. It's kind of a good safety feature as well if you happen to drive your ute into some water while it's hot, where the older sort of vehicles that didn't have this hydrostatic fan would snap fins off when they hit the water. This thing will at least slip and cool down very quickly, and then allow the fan to sort of spin separate to the pulley, or not spin separate to the pulley while it's spinning. So it's kind of a good safety measure. So I'll go ahead and put it back on. So there we have it. Belts back on, tensioners are done up, fans back on, and everything's nice and taut at the minute. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the ute up, let it run for about 30 seconds, shut it down and just check all these tensions again, because these belts may well settle into their little V-notches. That may cause them to come loose a bit, so we may end up having to retension these things up again, but that's not too hard to do. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I hope you've learned something. Quiet belts. Life is good. Fucking mint.